publisher of Whitecap Publications, and we published a book called All Worlds Awakening by author Joel Roosa. And today I'm going to interview him and ask him some questions about his choice of words and his choice of characters and plot and so forth. So let's get started. How are you doing today, Joel?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for
Good.
asking.
Good. All right, let's start your interview then. All right, can you provide an overview of the world you've created in your book? And a second question, how did you come up with the concept for this unique setting?
Well, okay. Well, essentially, the all worlds are everything, every dimension, everywhere, and not like the movie Everything at Once, but it's like the
Yeah.
all worlds are the multiverse. It's just I wanted something I could call them. It was mine, and not just the multiverse because that's been used.
Yeah.
So it's like I needed all of my stuff happens in the all worlds. So that's really easy for it because all worlds, everything. But this way, if I need to do crossovers with characters from different stories, I don't have to make some kind of cunning and elaborate plan to get them together. It's like, all I have to do is pierce this dimensional barrier, and there you are. You know, it's like theoretically, everything everywhere would exist in the all worlds, but other authors might disagree with me. You know, like, no, my stuff doesn't exist in your worlds. You know, so, but the multiverse is everything.
Well, it's your world, right?
Yeah.
It's unique.
But it's my
separate
stuff.
from their worlds, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. How did you come up with the concept for this unique setting?
Well, it's how can I say it? It's like I've always been into the multiverse ever since Flash comics about 50, 60 years ago. There was this thing they did, Flash of Two Worlds. I was just getting into comics. I was like,
I see.
5 or 6. It was like, and it's like, say, what's this here now? It's like, well, what they did is when they did the new Flash, the same writer of the old Flash was writing him, Gardner Fox, and he did this thing where the current Flash traversed the dimensions into the other universe and met the original Flash. And I go, that's cool. And that's why they started the whole Earth 1, Earth 2 concept they went with for a long time. So everything that happened in the old days was Earth 2. The new stuff was Earth 1. But I always liked that. Wow. So here's this kid. I'm like maybe 6 at the time, going in school, and I'm trying to explain to other kids about this stuff, and they look at me like I'm a lunatic. Like, nowadays it's no big deal. I mean, this stuff is all over the place in TV, movie, you know, other dimensions. Back then it was pretty unique, and I was pretty unique, I guess, for that.
Now you'd be a normal 6-year-old kid, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm not sure what normal is, but at the time I would tell stories and they'd like them, and like, and then I was trying to explain the multiverse concept, and they're like, "What? I don't get it. How can you have two things in the same spot at the same time?" Well, you see, they exist in different vibratory rates at the same time, and on and on. And oddly enough, that's pretty much, I think, the current multiverse concept is things, unique vibrational rates to that particular plane of existence. And they did it. There was a Star Trek Next Generation that dealt with that once too, I remember. And it's like, yeah, that's my thing. I like that. So yeah, it's everything, like the one movie, everything all together, all at once, you know, but separate. So
all right.
Yeah.
That's pretty good, actually. It's good.
That's pretty much how mine worked.
All right. So, what inspired the blending of magic, fantasy, and science fiction elements in your story? And how do you balance these different genres?
Well, kind of had to have it, because if we're talking all worlds of the multiverse, there's going to be some crossover of magic, science, stuff like that. I couldn't just not do one and the other. So you've got people who can fire lightning bolts from their fingers by incanting a spell, going into a universe where people like use high-tech weaponry. And it's like, well, they've got to be able to exist together. Now, it may be that one doesn't work in the other. There will be some worlds where explosives don't work, for instance.
Right.
And worlds where magic doesn't work. But that doesn't mean they don't exist. And they realize that when they get there, this stuff doesn't work here now. In fact, that shows up in the book at one point. There's a place where explosives don't work. And as far as balance, I don't know. Everything fits into wherever it fits into. I don't try to tout one above the other or something like that, or magic is garbage and you got to go technology, or the other way around. It's just they all exist and they all have to get along in some fashion, or ignore each other completely.
Or pigeonhole your explanations of each genre, right?
Yeah.
Don't do that either. You just kind of blend them together, right?
Right. It's just like, they kind of have to coexist. And the people in the book realize how this works, and most of them anyway.
Right.
And some of the magic users have technology, and vice versa. Some of the technology users complain they don't have magic at one point, and it's like I need that magic stuff, man.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Your book features a diverse cast of characters with various magical and technological abilities.
Mm-hmm.
How did you develop and differentiate them?
Oh gosh, a lot of these characters have existed since I was a kid. I in stuff my friends and I did, and I just carried them along with me. I don't tend to get rid or discard anything. I adapt it. It's like I used to draw superhero heads, for instance, and so
really?
some of the name. Yeah, I used to do this whole cast of like new superheroes. I mean, they were terrible at the time. I wasn't very old. I redid them later on; they were better. But some of the names have come up. In fact, one or two of the names come up in this book. Actually, come to think of it, it was things like that. I just brought them along with me. The Valdurians, who feature in this book, were something from the 70s, I think it was. I was doing long story, but some of us would have like wars for who my characters would beat your characters, and we'd have to come up with rules why this or that didn't work, that kind of thing. There, it's like no, you can't just do that, that sort of thing. But I kept the name, and it seemed like too good a name to throw away. So
it is actually.
And it's like I use them, so why not?
But you didn't answer the question exactly. It's quite intricate, but how do you we got a diverse cast of characters with various magical and technological ability. Now, how did you develop them and differentiate them? You told the story of developing as a kid.
Right.
As an author, how do you differentiate them?
Well, it depends on the character. Some of them have like magical and or super abilities, and some of them don't. And I just let each character go in the direction that character needs to go in. Like the guy who has super strength tends to be the leader of the group. The guy who has modern weaponry, is more like support and that stuff like. And the smarter the character is,
the smarter the character is,
they tend to be in charge. So, and the smarter character is not necessarily the strongest character. So it depends on the situation. They find their own way, I guess you might say, or through me they find their own way.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. Now, the magic system in your world is quite intricate. How did you go about designing it? And what were the rules and limitations you established?
Okay, well, since I was doing magic, I needed to have utilitarian magic. This isn't like the kind of stuff where characters, sit around a circle and do summonings and commune with spirits necessarily.
Yep.
But they need stuff they can use at the drop of a hat. So it becomes magic you can summon forth with a thought or a gesture or a word. Not that the gestures or words themselves have power, but the characters are trained to think of things in a certain way. That if I do this happens. If I say this happens. The words in gesture themselves have no power. It's also almost more like a nervous tick. If you ever remember Bewitched, she used to twitch her nose to make magic.
And Bewitched, yes, I remember.
She didn't have to, but that's what she tended to do. Some of them just wave their arms or snap their fingers and stuff like that. that you develop your own little ticks to kind of get you where you want to go. Like if someone was to capture Samantha and immobilized her nose, that really wouldn't have stopped her. You just would have had to think about it, kind of.
Yep.
But it's like with the words or gestures not having powers of their own, this differentiates it from things like the Harry Potter universe. Apparently, the words alone have power.
Okay.
There was this one scene where Hermione was trying to explain it's Leviosa, not Leviosa. It's like, so how does pronouncing the word a certain way make a damn bit of difference? It does in their world. So in some fashion, I'm guessing they're tapping into something. They have to have magical abilities themselves. It's like regular people can't do it. I'm guessing they're tapping into something that recognizes this word and, okay, by the authority invested in me, you said it right, so you get to do this kind of thing. Expecto Patronum, you get a Patronus. You get to levitate something. You do this. But apparently, in some fashion, the words themselves have power. In mine, they don't particularly. Not that there aren't some things like that here and there that a word might summon a being. In fact, the Valdurians, if people were to say their name, it gets the Valdurian attention. Vice versa, if people say the word Valdurian, it will get the attention of people like, well, say what now? Who said that? Because a lot of people don't like them because they interfere with all their evil plans or whatever. And so they don't like the word. But the words themselves don't have an inherent power. It's just the people have trained themselves to draw forth stored power from their bodies. And I don't explain how the power comes from, but basically they tap into cosmic forces and charge a little batteries. Everyone has a little bit of magic. It's just no one knows how to use it. The ones who use magic regularly have a lot. And I developed a system. The spells are powered on SMUs. SMU stands for Standard Magical Units. It's like a standard magic unit is the smallest amount of power a human can focus on to produce a magical effect. And you could argue whether magic is different from technology. It's still producing a lightning bolt. It's still electricity, but so is there inherent difference in magic and science? I don't go into that, but it's just a science usually has more elaborate ways of like, oh, we got to make a battery, we got to charge this, you got to put these terminals together. The person goes, I'm going to do a lightning bolt and thinks about it a little bit and boom. This is the kind of thing where if they're interfered with, like you don't usually people do a lot of magic in the middle of combat because it requires concentration. So if you're trying to come up with some,
that's a limitation then, right?
You have to step back a little bit because it's like it would be like trying to compose something like trying to compose a sonnet in the middle of a slugfest or something like that. And not that that's impossible, it just takes a while, I suspect.
Now, science fiction, exploring the science fiction elements, often explores advanced technology and futuristic concepts, right? How do you incorporate science and technology into a fantasy world, which is essentially what you do, right?
Yeah.
But you can argue that your fantasy world is a quasi-technological world also, right? But can you share any specific examples from your book?
Well, for instance, the main group has this earbud they tend to use a lot that has amazing communicative powers over long distances, far better than what the group starts off with. But it's they use that a lot for getting information back and forth, and it's also a convenient plot device for not having to have characters run back or yell a lot towards each other to explain things. So I use that there, and one character carries an M1 Garand rifle, for instance. So it all seems to work together rather smoothly because they don't really think about it too much. They don't think about magic and science so much being different as just it's a convenient thing that's available to use, and they don't worry too much about, well, is this science or technology? Unless they're in World War I or the other doesn't work particularly. So
okay. Now, many readers have found your book's plot to be incredibly engaging. What were the key elements that drove the narrative, and how did you plan the story's twists and turns?
Well, I figured fallen gods and eldritch body snatchers were a good start to get something rolling there. It's like, if I can't do something with that, then I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I just worked from fallen gods here. Okay, now we got eldritch body snatchers. Like, the gods weren't particularly malevolent, at least, well, not most of them, but the body snatchers are, and they're hard to do. And there's lots of them. They're all over. But as far as planning things out, I don't tend to plan things in great detail. What I do is I set goals for myself. Okay, by the end of the book, this has to have happened. Like what? Well, the body snatchers have to be beaten. Oh yeah, that's a good goal. And then it's along the way, depending on the setup, the characters involved, the world they're in, it's like the opportunities present themselves to move the story forward. And I just have to figure out, okay, I don't have a list of, okay, this has to happen by chapter 7, that kind of thing. It's just like, by some point, they have to have accomplished this. They have to have established what the body snatchers are, what they're trying to do, and then find ways of dealing with them. And
your thinking kind of allows your subconscious to set your plots, right?
Yeah, your goal. Yeah, exactly. It's like, so I set goals and let the details kind of seep out as I go along. I find this interesting. I find I give myself plenty of details to work with when plots go like, well, how am I going to resolve this? Oh, wait, I put that in already. If I use this, and this, it will work. Because I've done something. I was like, did I just write myself into a corner? And like, no, I didn't. I already established blah 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 blah. And it's like, and I often find that will work. I've done that in any number of stories, and there's a lot of weird things. I'm not related, but there was, they do show up at one point. There was a story in which it was a fairy tale mashup, and there's this one character who was trying to, like, find a way to revive his lost love, and these were like, Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, stuff like that. And I'm blanking on his name right now, but it was Vic Donner was the character's name. And then when I'm trying to establish, like, well, who is Vic Donner? Wait a minute. All this Vic Donner, Viking Thunder, Thor. It's like I think like, oh, I didn't even know I was going there, but it all fit together perfectly. I was like, well, I'll be damned. Thank you, me. It's like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing half the time, but it seems to work out somehow.
Well, allows your subconscious. Well, when you plot points, when you devise plot points, and only plot points, you let subconscious fill in the blanks, right?
Right. Yeah. There you go. It's just like, and it does a pretty good job of it so far. It's like, I haven't had to argue with myself too much.
Now, the concept of world building is essential in fantasy and science fiction. So can you talk about the research and creative process that went into building this unique world, including its history, culture, and geography?
Well, since I deal with a lot of different, like, mini worlds and stuff, there's not a ton of history elements and not a whole lot of geography, but I assemble whatever elements I need to. The one interesting thing that I did have to research was the Knights of Valoran use fragments of Bifrost, the rainbow bridge from Norse mythology, to traverse dimensions. And I decided, they'll activate it by singing off, off we go into the wild blue yonder. Oh, wait, no, off we go into the rainbow yonder. Wait, how can I do that in Norwegian? So I looked it up. I usually Google Translate first, but then I was like, and just to check, I knew an expert on the Norwegian language because he lived in Australia. At the time he had a job. He was living in one of the Norwegian countries. So I asked him, and he had a guy that translated. I was pretty close, but of course with Google Translate, you get what they give you. He translated it perfectly. It just literally goes, off we go into the rainbow yonder in Norwegian. So, and it's like, was like, okay, that was research. That's a given. We had an actual Norwegian tell us how to do that. So, and as far as other research, there was one city I had trouble with. There was this weird city named New York. It didn't seem very realistic. So I had to look up what this New York thing was and how to make it realistic in the story. I'm not sure if I accomplished it or not. I mean, New York's New York is clearly a fantasy city, but I mean, I figured I'd use it for my story, see if I can make it work. But yeah.
All right. Now let me ask you, themes often play a significant role in genre fiction, right? What are the central themes of your book, and why did you choose to explore them in a magical, fantasy, and science fiction context?
Well, good versus evil, obviously, but the destructiveness of war is another one. There's a lot of destruction. Right. And primarily, though, the theme, no matter how bad things are, there's people that have your back. Like the Knights of Valor are there for you. They'll do whatever they can to help. And it's like, okay, that's pretty much it. As far as for why a science fiction or fantasy setting, that's what I write, or what I tend to write. And it's like, I usually work things into that sort of concept. It's kind of what I do. I mean, I could write normal. I could write non-fantasy or non-science fiction, but I'd always have that thing of like, I just want to put this into it, but I can't. It's like, because there's certain things in stories you can get away with kind of being fantasy or sort of having a fantasy element, but it doesn't really manifest. It sort of seems to be there. Some stories can get away with that because it's like, right, there's a mood invoked. I have trouble with that. It's like, if you're not going to come right out and let us know there's something fantasy or eldritch or horror happening, it's like, it seems like kind of like you're wasting your time almost. But that's just me. I mean,
like that.
Yeah, everyone always has their particular ways of writing. There are some people who like to write, I don't know, almost fantasy, like they're afraid to go full fantasy. I can't explain it. It's just,
every author's different, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It's like maybe they don't want to be pigeonholed as that fantasy author or something like that, possibly. Or sci-fi. Sci-fi, well, as you may recall, sci-fi didn't used to be what's the word? Like kosher. It was like, sci-fi is just junk fiction or something like that. It didn't have any literary value, and it went through that for a long time. Science fiction is just that crap you get in that Galaxy magazine or Worlds of If. It's just like, alien invasion, stuff like that. Not to say that's not true, but it was definitely its own fiction, and it's like, alien invasions, if done rightly, could be just fine. I mean, yes, there's been.
I guess so, actually.
Yeah, Earth has been invaded by aliens so many times. Wow, it's just look. I often wonder if I could count them. I doubt it. There's so many paperbacks, comic books, movies, TV shows, like
done along those lines. Now, the last question I'm going to ask you is: as an author, you've created a rich and immersive environment that readers can get lost in. What do you hope readers will take away from your book, both in terms of enjoyment and any deeper messages or ideas you've woven into the narrative? That's kind of a long, complex question, but I think you can answer it.
Well, I want to take away that the characters are enjoyable on some level. These are people that, in some cases, you wouldn't mind hanging with, and that are interesting. They're not just like powers or abilities or solution to the problem. They're interesting people that have something to say, and they're also ass kickers. And they'll go out of their way to deal with the problem in the way that probably does the least harm to anybody.
Right.
And that these people have personalities. They're not just powers; they're personalities that just happen to have powers. As far as a takeaway, it's like that maybe this might be a world you'd want to know, a world you'd want to visit. It's like, hey, this is interesting. I'd like to see this place. I'd like to be there. Maybe I could be the hero in this world. That kind of thing.
That's pretty wise, actually. Yeah,
Thank-
it makes sense.
Oh, thanks. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
And actually, this is Joel Roosa that I'm interviewing, and his book is All Worlds Awakening, and we're going to release it in approximately 2 weeks. Maybe as early as next Wednesday, but definitely in 2 weeks, right? And it's a great, great read, and you should pay attention to this because he's an up and coming author, right? So, all right. All right. So see you next time, Joel, and we'll do an interview a week for 5 weeks or 6 weeks, maybe
Okay.
7. All right. That's it. But goodbye and have a nice day.
Well, thanks. You too.
All right.
Okay. Bye bye.